Welcome to our daily reflection for this Saturday, August 30th. And today we have a great exhortation from Paul to the Thessalonians where he doubles down on this theme of charity, of love. And he says, according to fraternal charity, you don't have anybody to need to write you, or you've been taught by God about love and you're embodying this and everyone's talking about it, and that's great. But I need you, and he's going to exhort here because that's what Paul does. He's an exhorter. I want you to double down on this. I want you to do this more and more. I want you to progress and deepen in charity. Yes, you're loving. Yes, you're following charity, but you can do it more. You can take it up to a higher gear. And I think this is a great word for us because as Christians, we're like, yeah, no, I'm charitable. I'm living, the Christian life. And the question that Paul has for you today is, can you take it up into another gear? Can you live charity with the people you're living with, family, friends, co-workers? Can you take your game up a notch? And if you can, isn't that what God wants? You better do it then. And that, I love that. And then he says, okay, once you really dive into charity, you're focusing on others more, and you're being empathetic, and you're living in community in a deeper way. And then there's two weaknesses to that, two temptations that come from on a different spectrum. On one side, you get so focused on, you're living and you're charitable to others, but then you can become a busybody. And he says you got to make sure you mind your own affairs. You have to love others and be empathetic and serve them, but don't become that busybody who doesn't mind their own affairs, where you want to micromanage other people. You're called to serve them, not manage them, right? So that there's a subtle distinction there, and Paul really understands that. And then the other thing about charity in a community is, hey, make sure you pull your own weight, right? Because people are going to be serving one another, and that's good, but you have to work with your own hands and support yourself. And one of the problems Paul sees with the Thessalonians is that some of the Thessalonians get lazy and they rely on others to take care of them. And he says, hey, if you don't work, you don't eat. And there's a danger of pseudo-Christianity or pseudo-charity that ends up into kind of what we would call the welfare state, right? Where everybody gets something for nothing. And if people can contribute and they don't, they should have the consequences of that. And so Paul brings that out. So that would be a mistaking of fraternal charity, of leading people to not have to work, to be lazy. And that Paul doesn't want laziness to be the fruit of the community's charity. And so those are the two guardrails he puts around this exhortation to deeper fraternal charity, which is a beautiful thing. And then we have Jesus with the parable of the talents, which is the venture capitalist parable, as I like to call it. And I love this parable. And let's just zoom in on the guy who fails. And why does he fail? Well, he even confesses, I was afraid, and so I buried my talent. And so this is the warning. What talents has God given you that you haven't put into full effect, right? And is it because of fear? What area in your life are you anxious or afraid, and so you're not acting? Fear keeps us from action, and that's the danger. In fact, Jesus knows this in Matthew 6. He says, don't be anxious about provisions, trust your Father, because he knows that's the number one cause for people not to be generous or to be substantially generous, is because they're uncertain about the future, and so they're afraid. Fear keeps us from action. Fear keeps us from generosity. Fear keeps us from bearing witness. Fear keeps us from sharing the gospel, sharing our own resources physically, materially, whatever. So fear and anxiety is something that we ought to fear, because if we fear God, we won't fear anything else. But if we don't fear God first and foremost, we'll fear everything else. Let's reflect on that, and may the Lord bless and keep you.
This daily reflection is brought to you thanks to the generous support of the Mission Circle. Join the Mission Circle to help Catholics worldwide understand, live, and share their faith. Sign up at missioncircle.org today.